Hello, this is Talking Europe on France 24. I'm Catherine Nicholson at the European Parliament in Strasbourg with the politician who has just made history by becoming this institution's youngest ever president, elected to the job, in fact, on her 43rd birthday. A member of the European Parliament from the EU's smallest member state, Malta, Roberta Metsola represents the Maltese Nationalist Party, which is currently in the opposition. Hello, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for inviting me.
I'd like to start with a word about Ukraine. Obviously, still a lack of clarity at this moment around Russia's military presence close to Ukraine. You and the leaders of the European Parliament's political groups have just issued a joint statement this week condemning, quote, the threat of Russian military aggression against Ukraine. So do we read into that you are not convinced by Moscow saying that it is moving its troops away from Ukraine?
No, in fact, this follows also a debate that we had this morning inside the plenary, together with the President of the European Council and President of the European Commission, where there was a very strong statement that we urge for de-escalation. We recall our long-standing position and also recent ones on Russia. We reiterate our solidarity with Ukraine, but also reaffirm that if the escalation had to occur and the aggression had to be actually take place, and the Parliament would align with the other institutions in ensuring concrete, swift and effective action. Perhaps also importantly, this Parliament today voted on a €1.2 billion macro-financial assistance. Quick decision, sending that as a message of tangible solidarity with Ukrainian people.
I'd like to move on to talking about your appointment to this job and what that means, in fact, for your home country. As I mentioned, Malta, the smallest EU member state, just 500,000 population out of 450 million EU citizens. And it's only been a member for 18 years. What does it mean for you and for your home country that you've taken this office?
We've never really seen Malta as small. I think it's a matter of strength and size of arguments rather than geography. I belong to the Erasmus generation that didn't distinguish between new, old, north, south. It's just that we looked at the European Union as a grouping of millions of citizens to which we could form part of, because that was a protection of a better standard of life, having better values, protection from the rule of law, media freedom, etc. So when you look at now the position I hold, I would say this is a big deal. Also the fact that for the first time in 20 years, the European Parliament has elected a woman. And I said in my inaugural speech that I will do everything in my power to make sure that we won't have another 20 years before the European Parliament has a woman as its president. But of course, for Malta, a country that had the very pro-European vision and is still very pro-European, this is something that matters to everybody who lives on the island, but also to anybody who lives in an EU member state where it could happen and it could be done by anyone.
Indeed. Looking at your inaugural speech as the European Parliament President, you talked about how the Parliament impacts on EU citizens. You said our house matters. It matters to, and you listed many different kinds of people, including every woman in our union still fighting for her rights. And now this is an issue that you know has come up a lot since then. Does your support for women extend to supporting their right to legal, safe abortions around the EU?
As you say, this has been, of course, a big debate, even in the run-up to my election, where this Parliament has been extremely vocal, and I have been part of that voice in making sure that we have gender equality. We still, as I said in my inaugural speech, are very far away from that. And upon my election, I made it clear that that Parliament's position is also my position, a position that I have long held.
You have, however, personally consistently voted against resolutions at the Parliament defending the right to abortion. Could you see why, as a politician who has spoken about your own convictions, people might be suspicious about your ability not to pursue your own convictions on this issue?
I wouldn't call those suspicions. Those are questions that I've been always very willing to answer. On this, as I said, my position is clear. My position is that of the European Parliament. The voting record that you refer to is one that is shared by members who are elected from my country, all of them, and that goes back to a protocol which is annexed to our accession treaty that makes it very clear that nothing that is adopted within the European Parliament could lead to the introduction of abortion in Malta, because that is a debate that has to be held nationally. That is a position that we, as members of the European Parliament elected from Malta, are legally bound by, but that is also a position that today, as Parliament President, I can say would be the position that the European Parliament has held long-standing majorities, and I will represent and promote that majority, as I have done also as Vice President of the European Parliament since getting elected in November 2020.
Another major issue for Malta, still tremors running through Maltese society after the murder of Daphne Caruana Galizia, the journalist, in 2017. Now, you came to wide public attention when you refused to shake the hand of the Maltese Prime Minister of the time, Joseph Muscat, for example. It's just over 4 years on from that killing. The Prime Minister of today has announced he's launching a committee of experts to implement recommendations of a public inquiry. The government's putting forward legislation on so-called slaps, lawsuits brought in with the intention of intimidating journalists. Do you see that Malta is moving in the right direction?
Well, all steps or progress is welcome, but we are nowhere near reaching the goal or I think the ultimate aim of looking and finding the truth and making sure that justice is served. When in October 2017, Daphne Caruana Galizia, a mother, a very brave, courageous woman, investigative journalist, was blown up, was assassinated in broad daylight because she needed, according to some people, to be silenced. This European Parliament stood up immediately to say that we will not stop before justice is served. And that is why on my first official visit to Malta, I made it a point to visit the place where Daphne was assassinated, meet with her family, her children, her parents, and her husband, in order to reiterate that commitment. Not only also in Malta, there are journalists in other member states who have been killed. Jan Kuciak, precisely 4 years ago, for example, together with his fiancée. That is also a case that we will continue to pursue, because the European Union needs to be a safe haven for journalists, and that is what we're committed to.
A word about a huge issue for the EU, migrants, huge issue for Malta as well. The EU's Asylum Support Office has confirmed quite a few months ago that it received reports from migrants who are detained in Malta that they'd been physically tortured, they say, beaten. The Ministry for Home Affairs in Malta has denied this. Is that a satisfactory response, and should the EU be looking into this?
Well, I would ask you to check with the Minister for Home Affairs on this issue. This is also something that in this European Parliament we have been very vocal. We are currently pushing for the adoption of a migration pact, a number of legislative initiatives which will seek precisely to ensure the streamlining of the way migrants are treated, especially when we are dealing with irregular influxes. On this, my position has always been clear, that we have solidarity that needs to be tangibly shown, and that ultimately behind every person who seeks to arrive in Europe, there is that person, there is his or her family who is seeking a better life. Of course, our migration policy needs to be balanced between being fair to those who are eligible for protection, being firm with those who are not, and being harsh with those who traffic and who exploit the most vulnerable. And at the same time, we need to have an efficient system of returns. If we can tick all those boxes, then I think we can finally start to look at the possibility of having a coherent, effective migration policy.
OK, just before we round off our interview, you've spoken out against fake news. Here on Talking Europe, we look into fake news. I'd like to look at one item of that together with you and our viewers and get your thoughts on it. This is Fact or Fake.
Are meetings in European Union institutions systematically held in English? In mid-January, Eric Zemmour suggested this when he said in an interview,
"As French President, I will ask for European meetings to stop being held systematically in English. There are other languages in Europe, and we no longer need to speak English since the English have left."
So which languages are being spoken at the EU's institutions? Though the British have left the EU, English remains an official language of both Ireland and Malta. At the European Parliament, all 24 official EU languages have equal status, and all are translated during the plenary sessions. Every member of the European Parliament has the right to speak in the EU language of his or her choice. In the European Council, whatever language is spoken by the member state representatives, a summary of the main points and decisions at each meeting is published in all official EU languages. The European Commission conducts its internal business in 3 procedural languages: German, English and French. In 2021, a French report into language diversity at EU institutions found that English was on the rise, both in documents and in more informal discussions. It put this down in part to COVID video conferencing and to translation budget cuts. But if Eric Zemmour wants to only speak French, he would be welcome to do so in every EU institution.
Roberta Metsola, is there too much English spoken at the European Union?
I spend my day speaking French, English, Maltese and so many other languages at regular intervals depending on the conversation and the topic. The situation has not changed. The European Union is made up of different member states, different languages. We embrace that, and it's something that we should continue to embrace, because ultimately our citizens need to hear from their political representatives in a language that they know and they speak at home, in order for them to understand what we are doing and effectively respond with what they expect from their political elected representatives.
There we go, support of language diversity.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Roberta Metsola, President of the European Parliament.
Thank you.
Thanks to you as well. Hope to see you soon here on Talking Europe.